December 7th, 1941, 7:53 a.m., Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Captain Mitsuo Fuchida circled above the burning American fleet in his Nakajima B-5N, watching black smoke rise from Battleship Row. He counted the fires. He counted the broken hulls. He radioed the code, Tora, 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 complete surprise. His mind was already calculating. America had 8 battleships in these waters. 6 were burning. 2 were sinking. The Pacific Fleet was crippled. Japan had won the ocean in a single morning. But Fuchida noticed something else. He noticed what wasn't there. No carriers. He circled again, squinted through the smoke. The Lexington wasn't at her mooring. The Enterprise wasn't in port. The Saratoga was gone. He requested permission to launch a third wave, to find the fuel depots, to burn the repair docks, to finish the job. Permission denied. Admiral Nagumo ordered the fleet to withdraw. The mission was complete. America was broken. The war would be short. That's what Tokyo believed. That's what the emperor's advisors whispered in hushed rooms overlooking the imperial palace gardens. They thought Americans were soft, undisciplined, addicted to luxury, unwilling to sacrifice, incapable of the brutal, sustained warfare that Japan had waged across China for 4 years. They were wrong. They didn't understand what they had just awakened. January 6, 1942, 11:20 p.m., Tokyo, Imperial Naval Headquarters. Vice Admiral Matome Ugaki sat alone in his office, reviewing intelligence reports by candlelight. The smell of ink and old paper filled the room. Outside, the winter wind rattled the shutters. He read the same lines over and over. The numbers didn't make sense. American shipyards had begun construction on 17 new Essex-class carriers. Not repairs, not refits, new construction. 17. He checked the date again. 4 weeks. 4 weeks since Pearl Harbor, and America had already laid the keels for a fleet larger than Japan's entire carrier force. He laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd, because it was impossible. Japan's largest shipyard, Kura Naval Arsenal, could produce 1 fleet carrier every 18 months. America was claiming they'd build 17 in 2 years. Propaganda, he thought. American bravado. Desperate posturing to boost civilian morale. He filed the report and returned to more pressing matters, the upcoming offensive at Rabaul, fuel shortages, pilot training schedules. But the numbers kept appearing. Every week, new intelligence. Every week, the reports grew more detailed. Liberty ships launched in 45 days, destroyers in 6 months, B-24 bombers rolling off assembly lines in Willow Run, Michigan, 1 every 63 minutes. He brought the reports to his superiors. They dismissed him. They said he was reading American disinformation. They said no nation could sustain that level of production. They said Ugaki was worrying too much. He wasn't worrying enough. February 14th, 1942, 9:30 a.m., Detroit, Michigan, Willow Run Bomber Plant. Charles Sorensen stood in the middle of the largest room ever built, 1 mile long, a 1/4 mile wide. Concrete floors stretched so far he couldn't see the opposite wall through the haze of welding smoke and cigarette smoke. The roar was constant. Riveting guns, hydraulic presses, conveyor belts. 10,000 workers moved in choreographed chaos, assembling B-24 Liberators on a production line designed by Henry Ford himself. Sorensen had spent his entire career building cars. Now he was building bombers. The same principles applied: interchangeable parts, divided labor, continuous flow. A car was just aluminum, rubber, and glass assembled in sequence. A bomber was the same thing with guns and a bomb bay. He walked the line slowly, stopwatch in hand, timing each station. Fuselage assembly, 12 minutes. Wing attachment, 18 minutes. Engine mount, 9 minutes. He made notes, adjusted workflows, eliminated bottlenecks. The factory ran 24 hours a day, 3 shifts, no weekends. Workers slept in boarding houses 2 blocks away, ate in the company cafeteria, returned to the line. Sorensen didn't care about the war. He cared about the numbers. Quota was 1 bomber per hour. They were behind. He hated being behind. March 3rd, 1942, 2:15 a.m., Truk Lagoon, Caroline Islands, Japanese 4th Fleet anchorage. Lieutenant Commander Toshio Abe stood on the deck of the cruiser Notori, smoking a cigarette and watching the stars. The night was humid, still, the kind of tropical stillness that made you sweat even when you weren't moving. Around him, the combined fleet rested at anchor. Carriers, battleships, cruisers, enough power to crush any enemy foolish enough to challenge Japan's dominance. He exhaled smoke and thought about the Americans. He'd been briefed on the Doolittle raid. 16 B-24 bombers launched from the carrier Hornet, striking Tokyo in broad daylight before fleeing towards China. A propaganda stunt, militarily insignificant. The bombs killed fewer than 50 people. Most of the American planes crashed or abandoned. The pilots were scattered, captured, executed.
But the raid had rattled Tokyo, rattled the emperor, rattled the admirals who had promised the homeland would never be touched. It forced a decision. Japan would extend its defensive perimeter, occupy Midway, threaten Hawaii, draw out the American carriers, and destroy them in a decisive battle. Abe flicked his cigarette into the black water and went below deck. The plan made sense. The Americans had no choice but to respond. And when they did, Japan's superior pilots, superior tactics, superior discipline would crush them. He believed that, for now. April 18th, 1942, 8:20 a.m., over Tokyo. Lieutenant Commander James Doolittle pushed the throttle forward and felt his B-25 lift off the pitching deck of the Hornet. 500 feet of runway, no margin for error. His co-pilot gripped the yoke. The bomber shuddered, wheels lifting just as the deck ended, open ocean below. He didn't look back. The flight to Tokyo took 4 hours. He flew low, 50 feet above the waves, stayed under radar. The city appeared as a gray smudge on the horizon. He climbed to 1,200 feet and opened the bomb bay doors. The target was an industrial complex on the northeast edge of the city. Factories, warehouses, oil tanks. He toggled the release, felt the aircraft lurch upward as the bombs fell away, didn't wait to see the impact, turned hard south and pushed the throttles to maximum. Fuel was already critical. He'd known from the start they wouldn't make it back to the carrier. The plan was to reach China, land at friendly airfields, refuel. He didn't reach the airfields. He ran out of fuel over farmland and bailed out at night, parachuting into a rice paddy. His crew scattered. Some were captured, some were executed. Doolittle spent 3 months moving through occupied China, hidden by villagers, guided by resistance networks, slowly making his way back to American lines. He thought the mission was a failure. Washington thought it was a triumph. May 27, 1942, 4:45 p.m., aboard I.J.N. Yamato, flagship of the Ninth Fleet. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto stood on the bridge, hands clasped behind his back, watching the fleet assemble for the Midway operation. Dozens of ships, hundreds of aircraft, the largest naval force Japan had ever deployed. The plan was elegant, a diversionary attack on the Aleutians to draw American forces north, then a surprise assault on Midway to lure out the carriers and annihilate them. Yamamoto had opposed the war from the beginning. He'd studied at Harvard, served as a naval attaché in Washington. He understood American industrial capacity. He'd warned the emperor Japan could win battles for 6 months, maybe a year. After that, America's factories would bury them in steel. No one listened. Now he was executing a plan he knew was flawed. Intelligence was incomplete. Radio intercepts suggested the Americans knew the target. Reconnaissance aircraft had failed to locate the enemy carriers. He requested a delay, permission denied. Tokyo wanted a decisive victory. The emperor demanded it. Yamamoto lit a cigarette and stared at the horizon. The sun was setting. The ocean was calm. In 36 hours, the battle would begin. He didn't feel confident. He felt dread. June 4th, 1942, 10:22 a.m., 200 miles northwest of Midway Atoll. Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey was lost. He'd launched from the Enterprise 90 minutes ago with 33 dive bombers, hunting for the Japanese carrier fleet. His fuel gauge was dropping into the red. The ocean below was empty. No ships, no wakes, nothing. He should have turned back. Standard procedure. Preserve the aircraft, preserve the pilots. But something stopped him. A feeling, instinct. He angled southwest and kept flying. His pilots radioed him. Fuel critical. They needed to turn around. He ignored them. Then he saw a lone Japanese destroyer, cutting a white wake through the blue water, moving at flank speed. McCluskey knew what it meant. That destroyer was racing to rejoin the carrier group. He followed it. 10 minutes later, he saw them. 4 carriers in a box formation, flight decks crowded with aircraft being armed and fueled. He didn't hesitate. He pushed the stick forward and dove. 33 dauntless bombers screaming down at 240 miles per hour. Anti-aircraft fire filled the sky. Black puffs, shrapnel, he ignored it. Kept his nose on the carrier Kaga, released at 1,500 feet, pulled out at 300. His bomb hit the flight deck and detonated among the fueled aircraft. The explosion set off a chain reaction. Fuel ignited, torpedoes cooked off. Within minutes, the Kaga was burning out of control. Nearby, other American dive bombers struck Akagi and Soryu. 3 carriers destroyed in 5 minutes. Yamamoto received the report 2 hours later. His face didn't change. He gave orders to withdraw. The battle was over. Japan had lost. June 7th, 1942, 11 p.m., Imperial Naval Headquarters, Tokyo. Ugaki sat in the same chair, reading the same kind of reports. But now the numbers were different. 4 carriers lost, 300 aircraft destroyed, pilots dead. Irreplaceable, veteran pilots who had trained for 5 years, who had flown combat missions over China, who could land on a carrier deck at night in a storm, gone. All of them. And the Americans, they lost 1 carrier, the Yorktown. It had already been badly damaged at the Battle of Coral Sea, hatched together in 72 hours at Pearl Harbor, and sent back into action. Even crippled, the Americans fought harder than anyone expected. Ugaki looked at the production reports again. The numbers hadn't been propaganda, they were real. America was building a new carrier every 3 months, a destroyer every week, a Liberty ship every day, thousands of aircraft, tens of thousands of tanks. The industrial base that Japan had dismissed as soft, decadent, incapable of sacrifice. It was retooling for total war. He finally understood. Japan had attacked a sleeping factory. And now the factory was awake. August 9th, 1942, 1:40 p.m., Guadalcanal, Solomon Islands. Private First Class Eugene Sledge crouched in a muddy foxhole listening to the rain hammer the jungle canopy. The smell was overwhelming. Rotting vegetation, human waste, decomposing corpses that couldn't be retrieved from no man's land. He'd been on the island for 2 weeks. It felt like 2 years. The Japanese attacked at night, every night. Bonsai charges, screaming, bayonets, machine gun fire. By dawn, the bodies would be stacked in front of the American lines. The Marines would count them, dozens, sometimes hundreds, and the next night it would happen again. Sledge didn't understand it. The Japanese fought like men who didn't expect to survive, like death was preferable to surrender, like retreat was unthinkable. American tactics were different. Preserve force, call in artillery, use firepower, not bodies, let the factories do the killing. He lifted his rifle, an M1 Garand, semi-automatic, 8-round clip, manufactured in Springfield, Massachusetts, shipped across the Pacific, handed to him with a case of ammunition, and instructed to kill anyone wearing a different uniform. It worked flawlessly, even in the mud, even in the rain, even when he didn't clean it for days. The Japanese rifles jammed constantly. That was the difference. That was the war. October 26, 1942, 8:50 a.m., off the Santa Cruz Islands. Lieutenant Memorio Seke pushed his A6MN into a steep dive targeting the American carrier Hornet. Anti-aircraft fire filled the sky, tracers, explosions. He felt shrapnel punch through the fuselage. His controls were sluggish. The engine was smoking. It didn't matter. He had enough speed, enough altitude. He aimed for the flight deck and held steady. Impact. His A6